Good morning, everyone. It's Saturday, which means it's time for yet another Salty Saturday morning. I am your host, Mr. Kadish, drinking a lot of Disney Shill tears this week because we're going to talk about the Acolyte getting canceled, in addition to a bunch of other interesting stuff with our fantastic panel of nerds, starting with the man, the myth, the legend, Dutch Butters himself. Future's so bright, he's got to wear shades. How you doing, Dutch?
Bro, I feel hungover today. And I don't even know why, because I've been good. I just
too much victory,
too much freedom and democracy, I guess. Yeah. Spreading. So yeah, no, I gotta wake up. I cannot get this. I cannot shake it this morning. I'm gonna sit here and be a lump of energyless fat skin in my chair. So yeah, but hey, everybody, what's going on?
Well, real quick, before I get to the rest of our panel, I just want to welcome back William Forbes to watching us live. Now, I want to know if William is confused because Matt Vader is no longer on the show. Yeah. Is now Dutch Butters. So is William Forbes as big of a Dutch Butters fan as he was a Matt Vader fan?
I don't know. Dutch Butters is a way cooler dude than that Matt Vader loser. So, you know.
All right. Speaking of way cooler dudes, we have Brian from the Popcast joining us today.
Hey now.
Thank you for waking up and being here. Really appreciate it.
I haven't slept in 3 days.
Oh, that's typical for you, Brian. But in addition to that, we have the Lord and Master of the Shelves, the King of the Pineapple Pizza, the man who has the greatest beard I think I've ever seen on another human being, Odin of OMB Reviews. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I feel like that's a little bit too high praise because I feel like there's definitely better beards out there. I put Vader's, sorry, I dead named you. My bad. Butter's beard up there. I'd put Culture Casino's beard up there, but I do appreciate it.
Well, thank you for being here today, Odin. I know that you've got a lot of kids who have to go poopies during the show. So
they do. So apologies in advance if I have to.
Yes. Yeah. If you see the big nipple on Odin's screen, it means that his kid's making a poopy, and he has to go help them out.
Literally, it's because I'm respected. Daddy, I have to poop. All right, bud.
All right. And last but certainly not least, our friend from the Ozone Nightmare, Joe Esposito himself, coming back to the show. Thank you so much for being here today, Joe.
Sure, no problem. Disney can't cancel my hairline because my genetics have done that for me. So I'm good. I'm safe.
Yeah. And for those of you wondering where Tom Connors Jr. might be, he's probably somewhere eating cereal, going about his happy-go-lucky business. But hopefully he will eventually remember that there's a live stream going on and come and join us at some point. But before we get into the topics of today, I want to give a big shout out to Eric Winberg for 1 Salty Nerd gifted membership. Thank you, Eric. Nice. I'm sure the people in the chat appreciate that. And not to be left out, Major Chai Chai for 5 Salty Nerd gifted memberships. And guys, as you know, we've been testing out a new YouTube feature called Super Chat Goals. And last week, we did not hit our goal, unfortunately. But this week, I thought, okay, we'll scale it back a bit, try to make it a little bit easier to achieve. And in order to celebrate hitting that goal, I said that we would post mean tweets on our Twitter accounts or X accounts. Anyway. Yes. Well, like I said, like you guys gave me shit last week for not being creative enough. With the goal reward. So I was like, okay, well.
Guilty as charged. I called him out. Yes, I did.
Yes. But we've already hit our goal thanks to the Dutch Butters superfan, William Forbes. So let me see. Like, I'm not sure how these are in order here, but I'll just go down the list. So William, if these are out of order, I apologize. William Forbes for $5, 4 out of 5. R.I.P. Vader. Vader was king. So sad. But now, Butters, let's go. Yes. And another $5 from William Forbes. Dutch Butters, glad to meet you then, my guy. Just watched Nefarious. Great review, Odin. Good movie, better review.
Nice to have Forbes back, that's for sure.
Yes. Another $5. Excited to watch live again. I haven't watched live in a while, but I do watch everything afterwards. Finally got a Saturday off. Well, it's good to have you back in the chat, William.
He's a busy
dude. Good to see you. He is a busy dude. William Forbes for another $5. Can't outbid y'all's new number 1, but I can get y'all to your goal for the mean tweet. I'm back. bitches. And of course, William Forbes for $5. 3 out of 5. Shouting out your awesome panel of nerds for today. And speaking of our awesome panel of nerds, Tom Connors finished his cereal.
I didn't even have it yet. I was sitting in the back. You wouldn't let me in.
Sit in his hot tub.
I'm more tired than that Jedi Matt Butters guy. I don't care if I dead name him. I'll dead name him all day long.
I don't care. You can dead name me all you want, man.
Matt Vader. Now what happens? You show up in my closet or something?
No, do your thing, man. It's all good. Go get your toasted corn pops.
Oh, and I just want to say to Joe Esposito, I love your song from Karate Kid, yo.
Oh, it's a good one. It's the only reason I make any money.
Also, Tom, the way you said that just then, just threw it back there. Vader Matt, ribs. I need my Vader Matt, ribs.
Get in my belly.
Get in my belly.
Baby,
Well, guys, speaking of money, we want to shout out our top donators here real quick. Brian G is still sitting pretty at the top of the heap for a $500 super chat. He's also our top contributor for the year so far. So big shout out to Brian G. Followed very closely by Scotty Dub, who came in at $400. So he's just $101 away from hitting that top spot. And of course, William Forbes for $120. He's still number 3. And he is back in the chat helping us hit our goal already. So, William, just let us know what type of mean tweets you want us to post out, and we will do that. Then we got Mexican Iron Man, who is not a YouTuber, but he is our most consistent donator. So he shows up every stream, drops some money on us. And of course, we have our top gifters, Jillian N., Bob Dorsey, Sam Schwager, Major Chai Chai, and Eric Winberg. These guys are always dropping gifted memberships in the chat. Really appreciate it, guys. That is fantastic of y'all. And our goal is to get 10 new memberships during this live stream. We're already at 6. So if anybody wants to drop 4, well, there you go.
There
Jillian,
she is.
Jillian N., the queen of gifted memberships, just dropped 10 Salty Nerd Podcast memberships, helping us hit our goal. Thank you so much, Jillian. You are truly...
We got to quit lowballing our goals. Next week it's 50 new memberships. And so.
50 new memberships. All right. And also everyone out there. So stay tuned at the end of this live stream because we're going to be redirecting you to the Real McCoy podcast, otherwise known as Mephisto's Movie Reviews. They air right after we do, and they always deep dive into a movie. In fact, you can often see Tom Connors Jr. on there dropping knowledge bombs as they talk about different stuff. So we will automatically redirect you at the end of the stream if you guys want to hang around for that. And of course, if you haven't already, sign up for saltynerdclub.com, which is basically our Patreon, or sign up for our membership because we are putting out new content all the time. All right, guys, so enough of the housekeeping. Let's talk a little bit about Disney Plus and how Doctor Who is apparently on the outs. Now, I know a lot of people here probably don't care about modern Doctor Who, but yes, to give you guys a quick rundown, basically Disney agreed to co-finance Doctor Who with the BBC in exchange for the US streaming rights to the show. And so they've been streaming the first season of the new Doctor Who, which stars, I'm probably going to butcher this name, Nukta Gundi. Is that how you pronounce it? I don't know. But basically the ratings for this new
shitty
Doctor
gay
Who,
wad, get it right.
Yeah. The ratings for this new Doctor Who have been so bad that Disney is considering not renewing their deal with the BBC past season 2, which is what they agreed to. And everyone at the BBC is basically saying like, like we're doing really good in like the, 15 to 18-year-old demographic, but that's because that's who watches Disney Plus. So they're kind of cooking their books a little bit. But I found it very interesting that basically Russell T Davies, who was the guy who initially rebooted Doctor Who back in, the early 2000s or something like that, they brought him back to kind of fix the ship because it had gone so far astray from what fans wanted. And fans were like, oh, yay, Russell T Davies is coming back. And then he made it even worse by going even more woke with the Doctor Who thing. And so I just wanted to get the panel's opinion on this. We're going to start with you, Mr. Esposito. What do you think of the idea that Doctor Who, this storied sci-fi franchise, is doing so badly in the ratings that Disney's thinking that it's a bad investment?
Well, honestly, this ties into the Acolyte, which we'll get to, but I don't really know what to believe in terms of how bad the show is actually doing. I've watched basically bits of all the modern stuff. I've never found it to be that bad. I've never found it to be that good. I've always been like, okay, this is good for a few episodes, but I'm not watching a whole season. So I'm kind of middle of the road. I like the older stuff because I grew up with it. So I'm probably just biased towards that anyway. But Disney is like every other streamer now. I don't know what they want the viewership to be. They're just going to cancel anything if it doesn't meet some number. What is that number? Is there ever going to be a time where we let shows grow and get better? I mean, don't get me wrong. You shouldn't let a show run for 6 seasons if it sucks, Discovery. But even Discovery was allowed to run to 5 seasons before it got pulled. So I think this is a bigger problem. I don't doubt that there is a viewership problem. I think you're right about the 15 to 18 thing. But I also think streamers just don't let anything sit anymore to respond to people's response to it. So if something's wrong, you usually got a season or two to go, okay, we can either fix it or we can't. Now it's, if I don't have numbers from the first 3 episodes, you're not getting season 2. It's done. And I think that's a terrible way to have creation happen. I don't think it lets shows grow or evolve. So I'm not shocked by this because this is basically the streamer response. If it's not 4 billion viewers in the first 3 episodes, we're done with it. Well, okay. I don't know what kind of shows you expect to get out of that, but it doesn't seem like a good way to have a show have any longevity whatsoever.
Well, Joe, as a counterpoint to that, I would say that Doctor Who has been going for like 70 years or something like that. So it's not exactly a new show. And the idea here is that Disney was buying a established IP to bring to its users in order to get them to stay subscribed. So I don't think that the issue here is that Disney's not allowing it to kind of like find an audience. I think the issue here is that the audience that it had isn't tuning in the way that Disney expected it.
Yes, it's a 70-year-old show, absolutely, but it's not the 70-year-old show from the beginning. This is a radically different show. Did they not watch any of the previous season before they invested in this? Is that what they're doing, just throwing money at nothing? Well, we know the answer to that, but at some point you have to know your product. This is not the Tom Baker Doctor Who. No kidding. Anybody who's watched the modern stuff knows that already. It hasn't been since the Christopher Eccleston stuff. But that's a company's job. What are we buying? Do we understand the audience? Do we understand what we're buying? If you don't, I'm sorry, I don't have any sympathy for you anymore. But I also think that was the show that's been since at least the last, 5 seasons have been this type of show. If you didn't like that and didn't think it was going to perform, then what did you buy? This is more of my problem with Disney than the show. The show is what it is. It's not for me. That's fine. Disney is blaming the viewership on the show. You bought the show. Did you not look at it? That's my problem with it.
So Odin, wanted to ask you about this because the new incarnation of Doctor Who is kind of interesting because they air on TV in the UK and then it's on streaming here in the US over Disney Plus. And with the UK, their overnight ratings, which they still report, for the launch of this new Doctor Who is only 2.6 million overnight viewers, which is very low for a country that has 2 TV stations on it. I mean, there are episodes of Friday Night Tights that get more views than that. So I wanted to ask you, we've talked a lot in the past about how streamers kind of determine what's successful and what's worth investing money in, what metrics they use. And it's typically the number of views, which basically encourages either people signing up or people being retained as opposed to the churn rate of them unsubscribing. So what's your take on Disney potentially not renewing their contract with the BBC for more Doctor Who?
I mean, honestly, it was a weird decision for them to do it even in the first place, because you think about the audience that Disney Plus currently has, which, especially in comparison to bigger players in the game like Netflix, is laughable as far as just the overall size, content library, etc. And then you just remember this important factor that's always brought up typically whenever Disney Plus and streaming is, which is that the biggest chunk of time spent on Disney is usually for content that is not even directly from Disney, right? So Bluey, of course, has this huge market share as far as the actual total hours of time watched on Disney Plus. You add to that also any of the classic Disney movies or the few modern ones that have have kind of formulated an audience. I think Encanto, for instance, has found an audience. I think you have Moana that's found an audience. The Frozen films, like those are films that you would also have a lot of people watching over and over and over again, right? Especially in homes that have a lot of girls in the house, right? And so you look at that and you have to think about, okay, who then are they going to try to get to watch this? Like if their mindset is, oh, we need to diversify our audience on Disney Plus, the issue is that no one's going to say, oh, I'm going to get Disney Plus now that I didn't already have before, right? Because I want to get access to just this one show that they could still get access to through other means. I mean, that's the thing that just does not ever make any sense to me. You add to that the show is overpriced, just like most of the content is in today's world, and poorly written to boot. I mean, I stopped watching this show during the final episodes of the Capaldi era. That's like, to me, when it started to kind of just slow down to the point where I just didn't care. And then as soon as they announced, oh, they're going full identity politics with Doctor Who and really starting to push that even further with the main character of the show, I was like, all right, I'm out. I'm done. I don't need to invest my time in this show anymore. And that's when I finally said, enough is enough. So again, I don't know who Disney had in mind, because all that they have typically on their platform that is going to appease and appeal really to anybody, and most of the time, most of the content being watched on their platform is kid stuff. And it kind of reminds me also, this is what Disney does, right? Because they bought a boys brand in Star Wars, trying to turn it into a girls brand, and guess what happened? People stopped watching it, right? They tried to do something similar in many ways with Marvel, and it hurt them quite a bit, right? It took literally, as we've been calling it, white boy summer, right, for them to actually have a massive hit at the box office with a Marvel film. So this is kind of typical Disney at this point, but it is, again, one of these a plethora of questionable financial decisions made by Disney.
Well, I want to throw this to Tom Connors because, Tom, they tried making the Doctor a woman, and not just a woman, but a white woke woman, and it didn't do too well.
Well, you got
and
a problem with a woman being a doctor.
And then
they be a doctor.
Terrible.
Then they said, hey, you know what? Why don't we make him black and gay and see how well that does?
He's misogynist and a racist. I don't know what to do with this guy over here.
What's your take on this, Tom? Why do you think that the audiences are slowly tuning out of Doctor Who?
Well, I think you gave me the answer already. It sucks. And I don't mean just because it's got a gay black man in it. It's just because, as you pointed out, this is a show that has been on for probably twice as long as most of us are alive. And
most of us.
You change what the show is fundamentally, people aren't going to want to watch it. I mean, one of my favorite stories is when Richard Donner had to go convince Marlon Brando to be in Superman, because they had him on the line, but he wasn't like completely signed off yet. And Marlon's handler said, by the way, just to give you a heads up, if Marlon can convince you that he can play Jor-El as a green suitcase and you just record his voiceover, he will do that. So you got to be careful with him. He will talk you into anything. So Donner was kind of set up for that. And so they get talking, and then finally he's like, well, let's talk about your part here. He goes, yeah, I knew we'd get to that eventually. And I was just thinking maybe I could play Jor-El as a bagel. And Richard Donner's like, a bagel. Like, yeah, he's an alien. Nobody knows what he looks like.
Yeah, a bagel. No problem.
On his planet, they all look like bagels. But, he's like, well, that's interesting, Marlon. We could do that, but every kid in America knows what Jor-El looks like. Okay? So we can't really change it now. He's like, well, you got a point.
It could be a bagel.
You talked me into exactly what you came here for.
This is now a Marlon Brando competition for who can do the worst impression. I said, win every time.
I talk too much, don't I? So, yeah, tell me what I look like. Yeah.
And anyway, for everyone out there listening to this story, this actually happened. Like, Tom's not making this up.
Yeah.
And so basically, he just kind of talked him into a corner, said every kid knows what he looks like. Look, every kid knows what Doctor Who looks like. Maybe they don't all look the same. There's kind of a similarity to them, right? Like, it's always this kind of slightly off-kilter British guy.
Right.
Like, that's really what it is. Kind of kooky. And nobody has ever said, don't give me a black Doctor Who, don't give me a this Doctor Who, don't give me a that Doctor Who. But I think the bigger problem is the way they thrust it upon you. I mean, I remember when Whoopi Goldberg wanted to be Doctor Who and they told her no. Right? So.
Well, I want to throw this to Brian
They
because
could already
Brian
had a gay black man is what I'm saying.
Is it a gay black man?
Brian, you know that there are all these sci-fi series out there like Star Trek and Stargate and all these things that people genuinely enjoyed until the wrong people got their hands on it and start making it about politics and the message.
Right.
What's your take on why Doctor Who is failing?
It's failing very simply because of what you just said. It has become more about the message and about pushing what their version of normal is in lieu of the story, instead of writing a good story. Look, I think it's possible for you to have a gay black guy play the Doctor, but he shouldn't be, his entire personality shouldn't be wrapped in his sexuality for that to work. I wouldn't be a fan of it more than likely, but I could see someone selling me, an actual gay black guy selling me on how he can play the Doctor in a way that works if the writing is good and he's not hyper focused on being gay. I mean, dude, this Doctor is so gay. Like, if there is levels of gay, he is like topping the chart. If you held out one of those radiation testers, it would just be like that.
By the
He's
way,
so
just to
hyper
say
gay.
this, John in the chat makes a great point. That was not ever the Doctor's personality. The Doctor's companions were companions, and they changed that, which almost everybody thinks was a terrible idea because you've now fundamentally changed the character. Brian's right. You can have the Doctor look like anything. The Ronnie was a woman way before any of this, and she was great because she was morally gray, and you didn't know what she was going to do. They played the character well. As soon as they started altering the fundamentals, which is a kind of common theme we're going to get to here, that's when the shows start to disintegrate. And so it isn't at all about gay black man. It's about, wait a minute, the Doctor never got romantic with anybody. The Doctor was kind of the thing that everything was hung around. But it was
he's too big for romance. He's too important for romance.
Right.
Like once you add a romance to his character, it actually makes him less than. In the chat, Shorty Short says Big Al gay. Yeah, he's Big Al gay. It's crazy. So the thing is, when you go that hard into the message, and then you shame, oh my God, and then you shame everyone who's asking why you're doing this. You call them bigots and racists and phobes and all these things. Yeah, you're gonna ruin your entire community. You know, the other day I saw a show. I found out that day that it was canceled after one season. It's called My Lady Jane, where the King of England is a gay, black, disabled man
In a wheelchair, yeah.
in a wheelchair. It's supposed to be a period piece.
Yeah, it's Victorian era.
Victorian era period piece. And I'm like, this can't be possible. My wife was like, look at this. I'm like, this is nuts. This is not, no way. This is like a joke. It's a joke, right? It's like a mock. It's mocking culture. No, it's real. Oh, wow. One season is what I got. Look, you had 60 years of Doctor Who, and in one season, you've managed to lose the majority of your fan base. That is, if that's not an incredible indictment for what not to do, I don't know what is.
I know how to fix it. They bring in Mr. Slave as gay as the next Doctor Who.
Yeah, okay. You gotta go bigger than Big Al.
Yeah.
Mr. Slave.
Yeah, Mr. Slave. God, Mr. Slave. Stop it. God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The companion is the
Honestly, I'm just glad I don't watch Doctor Who because therefore I don't have to participate in this terrible show discussion because Doctor Who kind of sucks. It always has sucked, and I've never liked it. So I never watched it. Therefore, I don't really have a whole huge opinion on.
Well, Mr.
Doctor
Butters,
Who.
you did watch 4 episodes of the David Tennant run,
and I didn't like
for our
any of
membership. Yes, that is correct. You didn't like any of them.
There's one more thing aside from the gay black thing, and his character and how uber gay he is. Also, like some of the logic doesn't add up for this Doctor. Like every Doctor's had. I know the universe is sort of crazy and wonky, timey-wimey or whatever, but there's usually a logic to it, right? Like a simple, like this is how the universe works kind of thing. But the second they introduced this guy in the Christmas special, all the rules were just thrown out. He was able to do things that no Doctor had ever done, things that it's like gay fan fiction. It's crazy. It's such bad writing. So put aside him being gay and black. Just talk about what the Doctor could do now. It doesn't make any sense. It's no longer pseudo science fiction. It's more like gay fan fiction.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this is true, and it's all being driven by Russell T Davies because he's a very liberal gay man who wants to make everything more liberal and more gay. And
it's crazy. He was so talented before he decided to let the message infect his brain, dude.
Yep. And a lot of longtime Doctor Who fans were very disappointed because they were like, hey, like we just wanted the fun stories that you started off telling, years ago, and instead of like all like this agenda driven stuff. And it's basically, it's doing the same thing that happened with Star Wars where the fan base is just getting alienated.
Can I add one more thing?
Yep. Go
Russell T Davies knows how to write a gay character in a Doctor Who show and knows how to do it well. He did it. He did it with Torchwood and
Captain
Jack.
Jack. Yeah.
Captain Jack was gay. A lot of people like maybe they're not super fans, but they enjoy Torchwood. Probably don't even know that because that wasn't the most important part of his personality. Wasn't his sexuality. Yeah. But Russell T Davies wrote a good gay character that most people like. He knows how to do it.
Well, you said it. You basically answered your own question, Brian, with the whole idea that, and Russell T Davies, when he came back, he made the character do all these things he never could do before. Well, and I remember in an interview, he flat out said, this is the kind of stuff I wanted to do before, but they wouldn't let me. Right? So, that just kind of tells you the mentality of some of these folks. They'd have been doing some of this queerdo shit years ago if they would have been allowed to. But somebody had their, wits about them and said, no, you ain't going to make this a big old gay fest. Right? Like, we're glad that you want to have some gay characters, but...
Well, Tom, it's not even about like that stuff. Like what has upset a lot of the Doctor Who fan base is how like they're basically retconning so much stuff about the Doctor and the show. Like they're going back and like kind of like tossing aside decades worth of canon.
Well, for what reason? So they can now say that the first Doctor was a woman. Mm-hmm. The second Doctor is, Fruity Gawa or whatever the hell his name is. So that's what they can do now. Because that's what they did is ostensibly start with a new number one like the comic books do all the time. That was another thing I remember people griping about.
And they couldn't even have, they didn't have the balls to let go of Tennant. Like they were like, well, we need to keep Tennant. So we're going to like completely break all the rules. This is why it's like basically gay fan fiction. It's like a gay 15-year-old Doctor Who fan is writing something. He's like, well, I don't want to get rid of Tennant, but I want my gay black guy. So I'm gonna write that there's two Doctors now because he smacked it with a hammer and now there's two TARDISes. Get out of here. That's crazy.
Well,
that's
insane. That's a byproduct of everything now where they're like, we have to bring Robert Downey Jr. back. Oh, now they're talking. There's somebody else that Marvel's talking about bringing back. I can't remember who it was. Another person that they let go. Let this stuff go.
Well, they're bringing back Ultron for Secret Wars.
Yeah, James Spader, and I love James Spader, but
it's his voice. It's going to be a different version of Ultron, though. So I guess
I don't want any version of Ultron the way they're doing it. No,
it's James Spader. I will take any version of James Spader. I'm sorry. I can go to sleep to that guy.
Yeah, but they're going to make. They're going to make.
Great. The character's going to suck.
They're going to make. They're going to make Ultron black and gay. So,
but I just his voice is so soothing.
You have such a sexy ass.
James Spader is my favorite, dude.
That would be better than the Ultron we got.
You soft penis debutante.
Age of Ultron. Yeah, I was so excited for him being that voice, but then the movie came out and I was like, good grief.
In hindsight, Ultron is not nearly as bad as everybody said it was.
I don't think Ultron's that bad.
Now.
It's still pretty bad.
I don't think it's that bad.
Not after the Marvels. After the Marvels.
Oh yeah, Harrison. Sure.
I think the character could have been cooler, but they really went really hard with like the hyper CGI armies, that stuff. They could have just focused on Ultron.
Guys, real quick, we got a super chat from Jillian N for $5. Greetings, everyone. I'm lurking as I get ready for the Renaissance Festival, so unfortunately, I won't be in chat. A sensational Saturday to you all. Well, thank you, Jillian. We appreciate that.
Did everyone else just think about a giant turkey leg?
Yes.
No, I was thinking about hot
James
chicks
Spader's voice.
With warm meat and a giant
dress
turkey
that push
leg.
their bosoms up. That was what I was thinking.
Oh about. yeah, the corset.
But hey guys, speaking of characters that have been mismanaged, let's talk a little bit about Boba Fett and how it looks like Lucasfilm is memory holing this character. So, by the way, everyone, links to all the articles that we cover in the show in the description if you guys want to check that out. But Tamora Morrison was recently at a fan event, and he was asked if Boba Fett was going to be appearing in the upcoming Mandalorian and Grogu film. Which it's funny because like they were basically copying the title format for Wolverine and Deadpool with that, but nobody cares about the Mandalorian and Grogu. But they basically asked him at the Fan Expo Chicago if he was going to take part in that movie, and he basically said that that the Book of Boba Fett was so poorly received that no one at Lucasfilm wants anything to do with the character anymore, and so they're not putting him in any shows. They're not doing a second season of the Book of Boba Fett. They're not doing anything with him. And he's like, I'm waiting for a call, but I don't expect it to ever happen, basically. And this is kind of shocking, but not unexpected. So, Mr. Butters, do you care if Boba Fett appears in any other Star Wars stuff?
No, I don't care if he appears in any more Star Wars stuff. But that being said, I feel like Mr. Tamura Morrison is just being a little impatient because I don't think they've even started much of anything with the movie they're going to be filming, right? I mean, I haven't heard any news about any of this stuff going on, and Boba Fett is a pretty large figure in Filoni's Mandoverse as far as I can tell, and I think he's definitely going to have to be at least make some kind of appearance in that movie that they're going to do to wrap everything up. Whether he's just going to be sitting on his chair there in Jabba's palace, petting his pet Rancor in the end, who knows? Maybe, but I think he's just getting a little bored and is waiting. Like he said, he's waiting for that phone call. But I don't think anybody else has gotten a phone call for this movie either. So who knows? I guess we'll find out.
Well, Brian from the Popcast,
Hey,
the Book of Boba Fett was so bad that it would, and Lucasfilm has had such a run of like bad Star Wars shows that it would make sense that they're trying to maybe distance themselves from failure. What's your take on this?
well, there's a lot of Star Wars you gotta distance yourself from. If that's the case, like Boba Fett isn't as bad as the Acolyte. Boba Fett isn't as bad. Boba Fett isn't as bad as multiple things. Like Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan is horrible in comparison to Boba Fett. I hated Obi-Wan. Like, it didn't even make sense. Again, it felt like someone writing Obi-Wan fan fiction. It's so weird. So, if they want to distance themselves from their bad projects and their mistakes, what you need to do, and I'm going to say it again, I've said it for 5 years now, stop making Star Wars shit.
Mm-hmm.
You need to just stop. Stop for like 10 years. Like, just take a decade off. Like, let people forget. Let people become, interested in the universe again and no longer be disappointed, or at least forget a little bit about the disappointment. Come back in 10 years with a whole new fresh face, not a fresh story, but like new, different creatives, and try it again. But like, you need to stop. Just stop making Star Wars stuff. Stop making anything Star Wars. Maybe focus on toys and rides. Maybe do stuff like that, but like, don't make any media for a while.
Well, let me ask you, Joe, what do you think? Do you think that fans have tuned out from the character of Boba Fett? Because back when he was introduced in Jedi, or I should say Empire, he was cool. He was mysterious. Nobody knew a lot about him. There was a mystique around him. Now he's like this old, fat, bald actor who takes his helmet off all the time and has low-speed Vespa chases throughout Mos Eisley. So what's your take on this? Do you think that, there's any chance to redeem this character?
Oh, there absolutely is. I mean, any good writer can redeem anything. Let's be honest. We've seen it done. It's just that Disney doesn't seem particularly interested in getting those writers to do any of that work. But I agree with Brian. One thing is, it is oversaturated. And it's been oversaturated with poor quality product. That's even worse. Bad enough there's a ton of it. A ton of it is shit. And once you have all that, you just don't have any interest anymore. I don't mind an older version of Boba Fett. I didn't think the series was as bad as most people do. But it also just kind of dragged for a while. It's like, okay, there has to be a point to what's going on, and there never seemed to be. I don't mind him coming in, taking over, becoming a crime lord. He can be old. He doesn't have to do all the action stuff. You could do an older series with a different actor, and have him always in the helmet, kind of Mandalorian style. If they want to do that, I have no problem with that. But I don't mind characters getting older, because guess what? I'm getting older and fatter, so I'm fine seeing characters that resemble me.
Characters can get older.
Yes,
this weird thing in Hollywood where everyone's trying to stop time. Like, it's okay. Let them get older.
Be a crime lord that's cunning and smart and uses others to do action for him, and that's not a bad way to evolve a character. It doesn't always have to be the character that's continually doing everything. They can become a mastermind. So there's absolutely a path back for this character, and there should be, because the concept is really interesting. The look's great. You can do lots of things with it. It's just that I agree with Brian. You have to take a break at some point. Let people just kind of let the garbage settle to the bottom and try some new ideas and try some different approaches and listen to what your audience is saying and try to adjust. You do want to have lots of different viewpoints, but if nothing's working, what are you doing? And that's Disney's approach. Now we'll just keep doing it. It doesn't matter whether this makes any sense at all.
It's the definition of insanity, Joe. Continually do the same thing and expect different results every single time. Yep. And it has not worked in 7+ years easily. Nothing has worked in 7 years.
You know, Tom, one of the interesting strategies that Lucasfilm seems to have been trying with Star Wars is by inserting it into different genres. So, for instance, you know, the Acolyte was supposedly a mystery, and then with Book of Boba Fett, it was supposed to be like a crime thriller, like a Godfather style crime saga epic type thing. And but they spent like a good half of that series just showing Boba Fett hanging out with sand people, you know, and chilling out in a bacta tank. And so like it was very disorganized, it seemed to me. But do you think that audiences, based off of like how bad Book of Boba Fett was, and it only got good when it became Mandalorian 2.5, season 2.5, you know, like that. Like what do you think of this idea that basically Boba Fett has just been ruined to the point where no one cares about him anymore?
I'd be interested to see where his sales are, because prior to that show, Boba Fett was a very popular character, arguably probably the most popular Star Wars character out there as far as toys and cosplays and all that kind of business. The only character I can think who might sell more would probably be Darth Vader. Outside of that, I mean, I feel like they did sully the character a little bit. I don't disagree with, we could have an old Boba Fett acting badass and doing whatever, but frankly, I never bought into this idea that he got out of the Sarlacc pit somehow either. So I don't see why a younger Boba Fett show would have been out of the question. Like, we know very little about the character. There's all kinds of stuff. Like, show us why he's so badass. Instead, you showed us how lame he is, and who cares, right? Like, I mean, I tried watching the show. I gave up during the Vespa episode when the teenagers come cruising in. You know, I'm just like, screw this, like, whatever. Like, it had no, and it should have appealed to me because I love The Godfather. I would have loved a story about, you know, Boba Fett usurping power from whoever, you know, in Mos Eisley, but at the end of the day, it was basically Robert Rodriguez doing a show, hoping that he'll get a Alita Battle Angel 2. Favreau at that time had zero interest in doing it, or he wouldn't have gave it to Rodriguez to basically do for him. And you can tell the writing isn't there. So at the end of the day, it feels like a show that nobody really wanted to do, and it was a repurposed movie anyway, probably. Because, I mean, there's been, what, 2 or 3 directors attached to this project for years. Even Mango lies about it and claims he never was, when there's plenty of evidence and people saying that he was. So, like, to the contrary, we've had this thing sitting around. It probably should have never happened. I think Solo should have been their moment when they're like, okay, we need to leave these classic characters alone and start trying to concentrate on other places, other characters, maybe have some cameos once in a while from characters, you know. But that's another thing too, is they just can't seem to get away from shoving characters down our throats that, well, you love Boba Fett, here's more Boba Fett, you know. It's like, so like, and I mean, you're also cutting like the audience in half to a point, because let's be real, the original Star Wars films has like this big of an audience. After the prequels, you're down to about this much. After Disney Star Wars, you're down to like this much. right? So it's like that's where they're at right now, and so nobody cares. Nobody cares about any of this crap. That's why the Acolyte did so bad. That's why Boba Fett is not going to get a second season. That's why Ahsoka is going to die on the vine. And I mean, and that's another more popular character. I don't know why.
You mean Rebels? Yeah. The new season of Rebels?
Yeah, basically. I can't stand that character either, but I know some people love her, so whatever. But at this point, I don't think there's anything in Star Wars for anybody but the noobs. And kind of like we were just talking with Doctor Who, it's basically a bunch of gay fan fiction now. So.
Yeah, you know what was the most interesting part of the Book of Boba Fett to me was Stephen Root's character, who was like he was the moisture farmer, but he was kind of like the evil rancher from like those westerns who kind of like hoards all the water and keeps it. And if you really think about it, like if you were going to take over like a desert planet, you needed to control the water, and then you need to control the unregulated gambling, and then you need to control the drug distribution thing. And that's where the Hutts were kind of like sitting pretty, which was that they had all that stuff. And it would have been interesting to really kind of go into like the reality of what it takes to build a criminal empire on a alien planet that has no water, and how that fits into like, the New Republic and all that stuff. But it just seemed like a wasted opportunity. So I want to get your opinion on it, Odin. Disney just doesn't seem to have any cohesive plan for any of their shows. And even when they seem to have a plan, they just kind of throw it away. Like we saw this like at the end of season 2 of The Mandalorian. Like it seemed like it was set up for a very definitive new direction at that point. And then by the end of Book of Boba Fett, they were like, oh, we're just going to reset it. We're just going to go back to the way things were. So what do you think this idea that Lucasfilm is sidelining Boba Fett has to do with like the grander plan that they have for the future of Star Wars?
Honestly, it doesn't really give me much hope, because as good as it is, I think for them to maybe say, yeah, probably should not have done this show the way that we did it, and probably have already soured the well a bit, I guess you could say, as far as people being willing to give another season of it another chance. All I can think of is how this is just in general the problem that they have across the board. And it's the issue that is persisting even in the shows that people, think of as, being better or have, fond thoughts about. So for instance, I think about shows like The Mandalorian, and there's people that are, fans of it. For me, it was always a show that was, oh, this isn't as bad as the sequel trilogy. It's not great. It's still not really great storytelling or even good storytelling, but hey, at least it's not the sequel trilogy. And so it's like, again, one of those rose-tinted glasses type things where some people I think are kind of attached to it because it's like the best Star Wars that we've gotten, but that's not really saying a whole lot if you actually look at the stories that we are actually getting. I like to also describe it as the stories like the Book of Boba Fett or the stories like some of these others is essentially that it's fan service without actual fan service, right? It's like, hey, you remember Boba Fett? Oh, here's a story of him doing stuff that no one actually cares about. Oh, you remember Ahsoka? Oh, here's a story about her doing stuff that no one who actually likes Ahsoka actually even cares about. It's like, but against the dumbest thing they could do. Like, you want to do some member berries, you want to do that right, fan service right? Look at Deadpool Wolverine. There's a reason why that film's made over $1 billion. There's a reason why a lot of people like that film, even though that film also has a lot of narrative flaws to it, right? There's a reason why people are drawn to it. It's because they're actually doing fan servicey things. Think about Spider-Man No Way Home. Same thing, doing a lot of fan servicey things. This, it's like they start with the concept of, oh, let's do a show about this character. Let's do a show about this character, right? Let's do this and that. But let's not actually give the people any actual story to chew on, and like for one, and then two, let's not even try to do full on fan service either, because we can't do it, right? We have to make these very bland, boring stories that actually end up in many ways, not just deviating from the original storyline, but also end up. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by Dutch. Dutch just distracted me with his tappity clickety clacky. But basically, like, so we're getting these stories about these characters, but then we're not actually getting any real payoff. We're getting instead a lot of stories that don't go anywhere for these characters and are really just a complete waste of time. It's almost like, hey, we have a quota to fill. We have to fill this slot of time. We have to make a show. So hey, let's just put Boba Fett in it, and then let's just give someone who's never written anything or has written very little, or someone who's going to be very highly controlled and not really be able to do any type of innovation whatsoever, and see what happens with it. And it's become really, really bad.
And I would make the argument that the first season of Mandalorian, where they teased out the Boba Fett armor thing, that was interesting. That was a good way to bring the character back. That was slow and steady and organic. And it was their most successful Star Wars thing, where they were trying to do something new and different, and they learned nothing from it. Nothing. They dropped everything that made that first season good and just started, as we said, just going into, oh, look, Luke Skywalker, badly CG faced. You want that, right? That looks good, doesn't it? And let's just shove stuff in so that people could say, oh, I remember that, without there being any actual emotional weight to it. No story point for it. No plot driven anything where you can say, yeah, this makes sense. No, it's just, oh, I've seen a baseball card or a collectible card with that on it. I know who that is, even if it doesn't mean anything.
Very good points, everyone. Speaking of good points, we have a super chat from Old Man Rising for $5. Hey, Acolyte fans, all 8 of them. That gut punch you're feeling right now, we've been feeling like that since Luke tossed the Skywalker saber over his shoulder. That's 100% true. I don't know about you guys, but
yeah, that's right.
Kathleen Kennedy was famous about saying, like, oh, it's about the characters. We care about these characters. And it's like, well, you shit on every single character we cared about. So why should we care anymore? Right?
I don't care about the saber. I'm just more disturbed by him drinking milk and it getting all over his face. I can't get, that's the horror image of the decade for me.
Well, that's Mark Hamill when he goes to watch a Kamala speech at the DUMPS.
And also, and I just remembered what I was gonna say before Dutch was clicky clacking on the keyboard.
Listen, clicky clacking, man. I was trying to like.
I know. But it's that not only are they creating fan service shows without actual fan service, but then they're also deconstructing every character. Yeah. And that's the thing that really pisses people off, is that you're not really getting a Boba Fett show. You're not really getting an Ahsoka show. You're getting a deconstructed version of them trying to rebuild them in some other image that actually has no connection to the original purpose of the character.
Yeah, the Star Wars universe is so vast and interesting that you could tell a lot of great stories in there, but they just seem unable to do it. In fact, Butters, we have certain connections at Lucasfilm who have told us flat out that the process there that they go through for hiring creatives in order to actually make these Star Wars shows is so convoluted and backwards and restrictive that most of the great creators in Hollywood don't want to work with them.
Right.
Because they won't let them do what they want to do, right?
They come up with these great pitches and ideas, and we've heard a couple of them, and they present them, and they just get dismissed because they don't touch all the bullet points they want to touch with their agenda nonsense. And if they did, if they did get through with some of this stuff, it wouldn't look anything like the original pitch was going to look like anyway. So. I don't even know why they bother. Kennedy needs to go, man. They need to just change everything there. Let it sit, let it simmer and stew for 5-6 years, just like
some executive with power needs to just realize that Kathleen Kennedy is not making them money.
Yeah,
she's never going to.
The thing that's frustrating with me is it's like you guys know I've been trying to just purge Star Wars from my existence here recently, and I've been succeeding for a little bit. But every once in a while, Kate has a Star Wars focused show come up like this one, and it's just like, I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know what I'm going to do. But it's frustrating because they can make semi-decent, passable Star Wars. It's like you said, Mandalorian season 1 I had a great time with that season. The whole season was good. I still think back to that. I think it was the second or third episode where he has the running fight with the Jawas on the sandcrawler. It was amazing.
Fantastic.
It was amazing. Fantastic. It was so much fun. I even liked Rogue One. It's not perfect, but man, there was a lot of stuff in Rogue One that felt like Star Wars. I love the homage to the first movie, with the space fight and stuff. And there was a lot of really cool stuff in there, and they're capable of hiring people that respect the IP and want to make good Star Wars. I thought that was Filoni for the longest time. I don't know if it's him anymore, but he's in a position now where I guess he's the guy. So I guess that's what we're going to get stuck with is the problem with Filoni is I just feel like everything he makes just feels like a cartoon, even when it's live action people. It's the same format. It's the same way of writing in style. It's the same thing. I feel like I'm watching a cartoon when I watch a Filoni show, and I don't want to watch a cartoon. If I want to watch a cartoon, I'll watch one of the animated series, which I like a lot of those too.
Everything's so silly.
Yeah,
because Filoni makes cartoons. That's right. Why.
That's exactly what I was trying to get to. But I just find Star Wars just completely frustrating. I don't even know what to say. So I'm just gonna stop complaining about it for now. I can't with it anymore.
I know that I'm alone on this hill, but I think Andor is probably the best Star Wars we've gotten since
maybe
forever. But you have to watch it the right way. You can't watch it week to week, otherwise it's very boring.
But you're making our point. That's something.
I thought
different.
You meant straight or something like that.
Like a cartoon or every other thing they've been stamping out. Andor had an idea. It had it was like a 70s like spy thriller. It was not trying to just do the same thing. Like Mandalorian was a Western, and that's where you can take. Honestly, if you didn't know anything about Star Wars and you watched Mandalorian, you wouldn't even put it together. And that's good. That's actually good that you would just have an enjoyable show with a character that you were following. Well, that's what the point should be. And everything else can be set dressing, but make it about the story and the setting first.
Well, also Mandalorian's just another version of Lone Wolf and Cub. But I will say that the episode of Andor where Andy Serkis leads the prison break is probably one of the best things from Star Wars I've seen in over a decade. Like it was amazing. It was really good.
Anyway, speaking of that far,
which just makes things more frustrating because we know that they're capable of making entertaining Star Wars, but they just can't for some reason.
Well, speaking of amazing, guys, we got Mexican Iron Man for $10. Hail to my fellow bigots and racists.
Racist!
I got it right this time. I blame this podcast. Racists. I blame this podcast for ruining Acolyte Season 2. If you guys had been more supportive, we could have gotten more space witches. Bad podcast. Bad.
He's not wrong. And this is for Mikey.
We tried and Acolyte died. We know there are more of us than there are of you. This is us. I don't understand. It was probably because of a man. The season of 1 with no season 2. Now Leslie doesn't know what to do. Man, all these internet critics are so mean. Maybe we can get help from Daddy Weinstein. We were review bombed, and all the racist men wouldn't let us have no fun. So now the Acolyte is done.
You know, Tom just plays those songs so he can copyright strike our stream after.
Damn right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Also, I'm supposed to make money on this shit.
And guys, you fucked that for $1.99.
Spook.
You fooked that. Unburden Star Wars for what it has been. Yes.
Unburden Star Wars.
Unburden Star Wars for what it has been.
For what it has been. I always think about the Trade Federation version.
Unburden Star Wars.
You must be a decoy.
They are no match for droid cars.
Did you guys notice how they changed the accents of the Trade Federation for the Acolyte?
Yeah.
I did not.
Oh, yeah.
They did it before that because they showed up somewhere else before, too, and I can't remember where, but yeah.
All right, guys. Old Man Rising for $5. I like Timothy Olyphant as Cobb Vanth. Would have made a better Mando than Pedro, in my opinion, or could have expanded with modern Western in Boba armor. Now, you didn't like Cobb Vanth because of Cobb Vanth. You liked him because Timothy Olyphant is awesome. And he was a standout to me in the second season of Boba Fett. And I'm glad that they didn't just kill him off in Book of Boba Fett, like they left it open for him to come back. But Timothy Olyphant is an awesome actor. Love Justified. It's one of the best shows, I think, on TV that has ever been made. So really good stuff there. And guys, I'd like to welcome Goblin Cox.
Wow.
To the Salty Nerd membership. Welcome, Goblin Cox. Good to see you.
We're all teenagers. That's hilarious.
Yes. And just a reminder to everyone who got a gifted membership or who signs up for a membership during the stream, just go to our YouTube page, Salty Nerd Podcast, and check out the members only playlist. There you will find all the members only content that you guys get access to. All right, All right, guys. So let's talk about the big story of the week, which is the Acolyte has been canceled. Moment of silence for the Acolyte. We hardly knew ye. But
Damn it, I wanted to buy a boat.
I know, right? So Deadline reports that the Acolyte was
the she
canceled.
shed. Sorry.
Yes. Acolyte was canceled. No season 2 for Disney Plus's Star Wars series. And what's interesting to me, Odin, is that we covered a lot about how they were bragging about the premiere numbers, about how many people tuned in for the premiere. But what they didn't report on is that the Acolyte actually had a second record-breaking thing, which is the least viewed finale of anything on Disney Plus, which is one of the big reasons why it was not renewed. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I mean, the biggest thing that I have to say about all of it is just how hilarious the spin was for that show. Like when it was actually running, they came out with those numbers, and immediately anyone with a brain, when they saw those opening numbers, said, okay, that's worldwide numbers there. Oh, okay. All right. That doesn't even touch the United States numbers for some other shows that have been released on other platforms. And then my favorite was, this is the biggest opening. This is the biggest show on Disney Plus this year. And then it's like, oh, well, what else has come out on Disney Plus this year? Oh, not a whole lot. So that's really not all that impressive either. So yeah, hearing the news about it being the finale, right? Whereas most shows, especially ones where you're not sure about, like we think about House of the Dragon, for instance, where it started off being, it's pretty sizable for opening, but I think it was a lot smaller than what it would have been had, Game of Thrones not ended the way that it did. But because the show actually was able to pique people's interest and then keep them coming back, and then just like with Game of Thrones, right, grow the audience, it's been able to slowly grow and slowly like crescendo up to their finales. This is one of those shows where every episode it was like as if they were losing people every time. It was like people like, all right, I'm done. All right, F this, I'm out, right? F this, I'm out. By episode 3, that's probably when they lost the most amount of people. And so then by the very end, you had basically no one left. And so it's always just, again, interesting to see and hear how they've always been spinning these numbers from the beginning. And now that the numbers have come out the way that they have about how low the number is, you have, unfortunately, these people that are just so stuck in this Lucasfilm bubble, right, where they are just so obsessed with, especially this show, Acolyte, right? Either they're just huge diehard worshippers of Leslie Headland, or of just the fact that this was being promoted as the gay show, right? This was being promoted in this way. We talked about this on FNT last night, that I think a reason why a lot of the people are really kind of like freaking out about this are, one, because most of those people on Twitter are bots. But the second thing is because a lot of them, because this tends to be the way in which it happens in the world today, they are putting their very existence and identity connected to a show, connected to a person. And so if that person or that show doesn't do well or isn't accepted, it's as if they are not accepted. It's as if they are not succeeding. And so I think you also have a lot of people that are just really sad in more ways than one because of these things going on. But yeah, this thing, good riddance. It was, I honestly can't believe it ever got made. It ever got put out on Disney Plus. And I mean, they've put out some pretty bad stuff before, but this might be the worst that I've seen. I obviously never got to see Willow because that thing has just been memory hold just annihilated from existence. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it was.
This thing, man, so bad. Good riddance.
There are even some rumors flying around that Disney might basically scrap all records of this season to take a tax write-off on it. Basically Batgirl this thing. But I want to throw this to Brian, because Brian, one of the big things that the Disney shills have been screaming about is that it's unfair that the Acolyte got canceled, and so they started a petition. And Dutch, I believe you said that it was at 28,000 signatures.
32.
30. Okay, so 32,000.
23. Yeah.
32,000 signatures of people who just desperately want a season 2 of the Acolyte. But Brian, you actually have some experience with doing these types of campaigns where you and
4
Shane,
petitions right now.
Yeah, you and Shane famously, were advocating for a Star Trek Legacy thing and stuff like that. How does that compare to what we're seeing in the results for the Renew the Acolyte movement?
Well, we have 75,000 or so, or 70,000 or something like that. I think we have like double basically what they have in signatures. In fact, I think our Stargate one has double than that. I think all of our petitions have more than that. Even the Orville one, which technically might have actually worked. So, if that's the case, I think it's hilarious that you have this like huge, massive franchise, and all you can muster is like, I'm sorry, I mean, I know 30,000 sounds like a lot, but it's really not. When every single Star Wars shill sub and every shill YouTuber is promoting it, 30,000 is not a lot. It's just not. It's in fact, it's a very little amount considering how much promotion it's getting. I've seen an article that's on a Variety article the other day. Like, imagine if my Stargate or Star Trek one got printed in Variety. Like, it would have a whole lot more than 70 signatures, right? I'm seeing this other one printed, like, it's on Deadline, it's on Variety. It was pinned to the top of the Star Wars sub on Reddit. Like, that's a big sub. It is getting a ton of promotion, and to only get 30,000 signatures, that is really lame. That's a very small amount.
Yeah, Tom, one of the big issues with the Acolyte was that it cost an enormous amount of money to make this really, really bad show. And Disney is in an austerity phase right now where they're trying to scale back, they're trying to save money. So it makes sense that they were like, well, this cost a lot of money, didn't really do all that well for us, so we don't want to continue throwing good money after bad. But it's also kind of emblematic of how Star Wars has been mismanaged, because ever since The Last Jedi, every single Star Wars property has cost way more and delivered way less. So what do you think is the role Disney played in basically telling Lucasfilm, hey, we're not renewing this garbage?
Well, I'm watching a video of a mama kitty save her kittens from a cobra right now. And as soon as I'm done with that, I'll come up with a good answer. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I mean, this obviously came down from the top. We've been hearing rumors. Chris Gore has been reporting on it. I've heard some similar things. I don't know if you guys have been hearing similar things, but pretty much everywhere in Disney across the board, except for Star Wars, or Lucasfilm, let's say, because that's kind of like its own thing and its own little island. And Kathleen Kennedy is like just keeping it bogged down in this nonsense. Like, everywhere else has been making changes. So I do believe this was probably a choice made from the upper echelon. It may even came down from Bob himself that said, no season 2. We're not going to keep spending money on this crap. Because I think they're starting to learn, especially after you've had, Deadpool and Wolverine and the last few Marvel movies, which have been mostly male driven, right? So I think they're learning a little bit everywhere else inside the company outside of Lucasfilm. Lucasfilm is just a lost cause. And just I'm glad they're finally taking some sort of control over this thing. I mean, Bob said he was going to do this years ago and he never really did. The only good thing he ever did about it was he distracted Kathleen Kennedy with that blood and bones thing for a while. And then the worst thing Chapek ever did was bring her back into the fold with Star Wars and other stuff when she was being distracted by that. It's like, dude, that was fine the way it was. Favreau had things kind of dicked there. You screwed that up. That's one of the only things I'll hold over his head. Other than that, I mean, since then, what stopped Bob from removing her from the equation is the big question. I don't know, because the Grogu movie feels like desperation. We've already discussed that, which is whatever. I mean, it's gonna do what it's gonna do, but that's the only project they got coming up that's, as far as I can tell, probably gonna make any sort of money. But Taika Waititi's project's shut down now. We've been hearing that going around. I don't know too many other projects that are still upcoming outside of the Rey movies and other stuff. So who knows what they've even got going on. Maybe they are maybe Bob is forcing them to reconfigure some things a little bit. But you were gonna say, Butters?
I was mumbling to myself because I was trying to think of the name of the character who's the main character of The Force Awakens, and as I've been, like I said, I've been trying to purge Star Wars from my brain, and I had the name Rey completely blanked out of my head. I mean,
John Boyega only yells it like 52 times.
I'm like
this is his whole script. Ray.
Yeah.
Ray.
I
was a stormtrooper.
They got the Rey movie coming up, right?
This is not Jakku.
Ray.
And then what about Mangold's like 25,000 years ago prequel? Is that still a thing?
Oh, here's a new line. Can't you just use the Force? There we go.
The Adventures of Rey Palpatine. That's the movie I want to see. So yeah, let's go.
Well, I want to throw this to Joe. So Joe, the big marketing crux for the Acolyte was apparently that it was the gayest Star Wars ever. And that didn't seem to resonate with audiences too much, but more so the people who actually bothered to watch it were subjected to literally some of the worst, most nonsensical writing, I think, that has ever existed on television. Like, we had fires in space, we had rock that burned, we had lesbian space witches, we had characters that showed up and then disappeared,
the power
never to be heard from again. The power of many, yes, exactly. So, like, in your opinion, Joe, what was the thing that really killed the Acolyte?
Well, it's a bunch of different things. I watched about 20 minutes of the first episode and realized it was going to be like every other Star Wars thing that Disney was putting out, in that I just didn't have any interest. There was nothing new. Actually, the lesbian space witches got me to want to watch those clips. I'm into lesbian space witches. I'm sorry, maybe I'm an outlier here, but that's a great concept. And I watched that and I thought, okay, this is weird for Star Wars, and that's working for me. But the problem is, from what I understand, and I'm not going to watch it because it has no future like half the streaming shit that comes out now, so why am I going to start watching it? It doesn't do anything new. They went back to the same old thing. It's lightsabers, and I guess it's a mystery, except it's not, because we need to explore the moral gray zones of the Jedi, because as Odin points out, deconstruction of everything. There can't be good guys and bad guys. No, there has to be, and I'm fine with morally gray stuff, but it doesn't all have to be that. And plus, can nobody on this Lucasfilm team design a fucking helmet that doesn't look like shit? What is it with this? What's his face? For Kylo Ren's look like metal spaghetti on a toy Playmobil Darth Vader helmet. The Strangers thing is a bunch of teeth that looks like it's from Umbrella Academy or some shit or whatever that show was.
I've seen cosplay that's better. Yeah,
it's fucking awful. I mean,
you're right. It looks like it's like a Spirit Halloween shit. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it is just largely the same of, well, this is just what we've seen before. And as we've all pointed out, if you're a legacy fan, or whatever we call ourselves now, it's like, well, I'd like to see something else, please. I'm not kidding, I would love a show with no lightsabers and barely any Force use. Something where it explores the outer galaxy.
You mean Andor?
Yeah, Andor, Mandalorian season 1, a Western, whatever. Something where I don't see robes and somebody going, and influencing somebody's mind, or I don't need any of that shit. Give it a break for a bit and give me something else that shows that this universe is a universe and not just like 3 planets where it's all inbreeding Jedis and Sith. I'm sick of it. Do something else. So that's what I think for me is that I don't even care about the agenda. If it's shitty writing, if it's overly familiar stuff and no new ideas, I don't give a fuck who's behind it or what message they're trying to push. I'm bored. And that's what killed it for me.
Well, you know what else might have killed it, Mr. Butters, is the idea that basically they set this show during the High Republic era, which nobody cared about. Nobody's read the books. Nobody likes this time period.
I'm really upset I didn't get my geode. I wanted to see a rock in the show, and I never got a rock. I'm kind of pissed off about it. I don't know.
Oh yeah, the Rock Jedi.
Yeah,
or dinosaurs.
So what Dutch Butters is saying is that life is a rock, but Lucasfilm rolled him.
Oh, God.
Instead of getting the rock, you know what you got? You got the non-binary beaver.
Oh God.
Or you got rolled.
Where can I buy that action figure?
Yes, non-binary beaver. What was his name? Basil.
How do we tell him?
Yeah.
Basil. Yeah. So Dutch, why do you think the Acolyte failed?
You want me to more on top of what we've already said? Because it was a trash show. It was just.
I'll give you something. Nobody's blamed Amandla yet.
Well, she didn't help with her stupid,
She didn't fuck
video.
with our discourse.
No. Look, I don't know why. We all know why it failed, because it sucked. It was terrible. It was just a bunch of DEI agenda-driven bullshit. It was, and it was always going to be that way. And it was that way from the very beginning when they attached Leslie Headland to it. We knew what we were going to get. Everybody knew what we were going to get. So, you can only put so much lipstick on an agenda-driven pig, right? To make it, it's the Star Wars with bullshit. I can't even talk about it, man, because it gets me upset.
Let me ask the panel so anyone can chime in here. Do you think that Amanda Stenberg or Stenlers, whatever her last name is, her diss track basically hurt this show?
Of course it did.
Sure as hell
so
couldn't help.
stupid.
What
Didn't
could?
help.
Why
But-
did they let her do that?
Honestly, I don't think enough people really were caring about the show for it to even really make that much of a mark.
But
The
Odin,
song wasn't good.
people
Right?
cared.
It's not like the song was any good.
People cared enough to review bomb it because there's a whole bunch of racists out there that don't like people of color.
That's always my favorite, because then you bring up other shows that have diversity and other things like the stuff that's in this show, and it's like, oh, I guess they took that day off. I guess the racists and the sexists took the day off for the House of the Dragon and other shows like
The
it.
easiest way to combat this whole like review bombing thing is just saying, no, you're just pissed because there's not enough people to love bomb it into a good score. That's the problem.
I get so tired of the review bombing thing. I've never review bombed a show in my life
Because the show's never really been review bombed. Now they've ignored love bombing though, which is a real thing.
I've written poor reviews for shows after I've watched a show and decided it was a bad show in my opinion, and therefore I have a right to write a poor review of something. But I don't know anybody in our world who gets together in the little secret cabal meetings and they go, okay, we're going to review bomb episode 3 of the Acolyte because lesbians. So everybody go in there and everybody's gonna do 50 reviews a piece on 50 different emails, and then we're gonna get some robots and we're gonna do the same. It's nonsense. It's the stupidest shit I've ever heard in my life, and nobody has enough time to do that. So it's just,
you guys know the funniest part of this whole thing is that the people who love the Acolyte and are begging for it to get a season 2 and are complaining the loudest about everyone who didn't tune in, their whole philosophy was, hey, if you don't like it, don't watch it. Right. Mm-hmm. And when people didn't watch it, they got upset. I just think that it's a real testament to the power of many that we could destroy this show through our complete apathy and not watching it. So in order to give a send off to the Acolyte, I have one thing I want to play for you all, and then we shall never talk about this again.
If you only knew the power of one, the power of two, the power of many.
Yes. All right, guys.
Timber, sexy space, which sorry.
All right, guys. So speaking of review bombs, guess what? Rotten Tomatoes is getting rid of their audience score, oddly enough. So we have this Cosmic Book News article here, and they're basically saying that Rotten Tomatoes is replacing the audience score with something called the popcorn meter. And they're also delaying when scores appear to try to be more fair-handed. And basically what the big difference between the audience score and the popcorn meter is that the popcorn meter only counts verified reviews. So you have to have bought a ticket through Fandango to have a verified account on Rotten Tomatoes. But there's no way to link your account. So it's just if you have the same email address on Fandango's service that you do on Rotten Tomatoes, then they're okay, we can link these things. But this is basically Rotten Tomatoes' official statement is that this is a way to combat review bombing. However, there's no way to verify a purchase for watching a TV show. So I don't know exactly how their TV thing is going to work here. But this is just another reason to essentially move over to Criticless. So big shout out to criticless.com. If you guys aren't over there using that as your primary movie review source, you really shouldn't leave Rotten Tomatoes behind and go over there. This is not sponsored, by the way. We just love Criticless. They're good people over there, and they come on the show occasionally, so we like them. But this is basically a thinly veiled form of censorship in order to protect big budget movies and TV shows from people basically learning the truth about them before they get a chance to watch them. So Brian from the podcast,
Hey,
do you think that this is actually going to work, that by hiding the actual audience score behind a different rating system, people are going to magically tune in to more bad TV shows and movies?
no, of course not. That's silly. I don't understand why Netflix thinks that they have to kowtow to these studios. Like, who has the power in the relationship? Not Netflix, Rotten Tomatoes. Who has the power in the relationship? Rotten Tomatoes or the studio? Like, for real, who has the power? I think Rotten Tomatoes has the power, not the studio. So why do they feel the need to play this gaslight game about the ratings of these shitty movies?
Well, aren't they partially owned by Time Warner?
And NBC Universal
I have no
more
idea.
so.
Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, but wouldn't that be an extreme conflict of interest if you were owned by the...
All of these are a big conflict of interest. This whole game is one big conflict of interest.
So at this point, it's a shell game now, and I don't want to play anymore. Like,
Well,
why should we take you seriously if you are just admitting to altering the scores? Why should we go to your website?
Well, Joe, a lot of people go to Rotten Tomatoes just to look at the audience score to determine whether or not they're going to spend their hard-earned money and time going to a movie or watching a TV show or whatever the case may be. So it was very influential, especially like with the audience score stuff. How do you think this is going to affect how people determine what they're going to watch?
Well, I think that it depends on how much you know. As you pointed out, it is, and people in the chat have said, it is owned by Warner Brothers and Discovery. So right there, and NBC Universal. So right there.
More so NBC Universal.
Yeah.
WB only has a smaller stake in it, just to be clear.
I checked out on Rotten Tomatoes years ago. I just did not like the way it started as what we were talking about as like a community-driven site, or at least that was the point of it at the beginning. And now it doesn't feel like that and hasn't for a while. And ultimately, anything that's owned by anybody who has any skin in the game is inherently untrustworthy. So is it too bad for those people? Well, maybe they'll find a better source of critic reviews. Maybe they'll find more authentic sources of critic reviews than this. I can hope. I doubt it. They'll probably just go to IMDb and use those ratings because IMDb sure run well. Thanks, Amazon. So it's... it's kind of a sad landscape if you want to actually find what people are talking about without having to worry about, well, who owns them, who's putting the money in, what biases may there be. So I can't pretend I'm all that upset about it. I'm not surprised because it's sort of a, why didn't this happen sooner? I'm actually kind of shocked it took this long for them to start actually being more revealing about what's going on behind the scenes. So it's a shame because I do think it started off with good intentions, as often things do. But yeah, it's probably better for people to look for other sources of their information. So in that way, maybe it's beneficial.
I'm always amazed at how much influence Rotten Tomatoes actually has on the movie-going public. I've worked with several people who, and I've gotten in arguments with them that will not go to the theater without checking out the reviews on Rotten Tomatoes first,
which is stupid because we've had the same aggregator for 20 plus years in IMDb, right? And before Amazon bought it, it was one of the better aggregators out there.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Butters, the interesting thing here is that in the future, Rotten Tomatoes is going to delay showing the score of these movies until they hit a certain threshold. So for instance, it's based off of domestic box office forecast. So if there's a movie that's $120 million plus, they have to have a minimum of 350 critic reviews before they show an actual review score of the movie. And the same thing goes for the audience end of things, where basically you have to have an average of 13,000 audience reviews before a $120 million plus movie gets a score. So it's no longer a situation where something can come out, get released, and have like a 0% score or something like that. And it's basically a thinly veiled way of, allowing a movie to pad its opening before people realize how bad it is. What do you think of this strategy?
It sounds like they're trying to figure out ways to get more people to go to the theater before they know what kind of a crap fest they're getting involved with. I don't know. Don't people kind of have a right to know what they're walking into? I mean, back in the day, I mean, there used to be regular movie critics who would post things in just the local newspapers and say this movie is not that great or this movie is super cool. I mean, that's all this we've done is we've just migrated from
Siskel and Ebert give it 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, exactly. So, you either back in the day, I would like if Siskel and Ebert hated something, I knew I was going to love it. So that was basically how I judged my movies back then. I don't know. It just seems weird to me. It feels like Rotten Tomatoes just can't get it right. I mean, there's other sites out there like Criticless, of course, that are operated and ran by normal people just like us, and they let normal people who go and consume these things say their opinions. It's like the whole thing is consumer based. There's no professional critics over there, as far as I know. And if they are a professional critic, then their stuff is getting lumped in with all the rest of us. There's no separation between, somebody who works in the industry and a movie ticket buying public like us. So that's why I've always gone with the audience score if I'm looking at Rotten Tomatoes, because it's always different most of the time, and it's usually more honest. And I don't know why they don't want the honest reviews. Maybe they should start making better product if they don't want the honest reviews put out there. It's just
Well, Tom, at the crux of this issue, basically Rotten Tomatoes is saying they're trying to make a more trustworthy recommendation system.
yeah.
But it seems to me like they're just trying to force people who want to leave reviews on Rotten Tomatoes to buy tickets through Fandango. But it's like, if you buy 5 tickets for your family, like, even though your family saw it, if they go on Rotten Tomatoes, they can't leave a verified review because they didn't technically buy the tickets. So what's your take on this? Do you think there's ever a way to actually make a trustworthy recommendation system for movies and TV shows?
I think we're it. I think you're looking at it. We're on it right now. Like, we're the ones that people go to now. And I think that the proof is in some of the pudding we're seeing in theaters. I mean, I'll give you an example of something right now. There's no way I believe that The Crow is getting a 65. There's no fucking way.
No.
Because I've not, there's been a small, tiny little group of kids that are going around, you can't accept new things. Otherwise, this is one of those movies that everybody like universally agrees should not exist. In fact, it's going to be the lowest opening for a major film this year. Guaranteed by the end of this weekend, because it only opened with 650,000, Odin, if I'm not mistaken, on Thursday night, which was worse than Borderlands. So I think he stepped away, but I think he would verify that for me. But point being is, yeah, I don't trust them. Nobody really trusts them. The fact that some people do drives me crazy, because it's like we've never been living in a society where I think anybody really cared what critics thought until now, recently. Like, even when we would, like, Matt's right, like a whole thing with, like, Siskel and Ebert back in the day, either you knew who you agreed with, or you knew the type of movies you agreed with them on, or you just didn't care. You didn't give a shit what Gene Shalit thought about something, right? Like, nobody cares. You see these wackadoos come out and they do their little thing on the critic things, and then you move on. You just want to know what's out there more so than anything.
God damn it, Tom.
At the end of the day, I mean, the Fandango thing is what has me more worried than anything, because they've been slowly, like, infesting the industry, and we have been kind of just letting them do it. And this started years ago with the whole buying tickets online thing, because prior to Fandango being part of this, I don't remember assigned seating being a thing. It used to be you got there early, so you get your popcorn and shit, and you get your butt in there so you get the seat you want before that other guy gets it, because that's the way the game's played. Nowadays, everybody has to go through Fandango. You can't even, here's the thing that bothers me, is I can't just buy a ticket. They even still charge me the convenience fee at the theater now, right? Like, it's like bullshit. It's like I used to be able to at least go to the theater and still buy my ticket. Oh no, now with Fandango now, you have to go in there and you have to pick your seat, and then you have to go through the whole bullshit, and then they charge you $3.50 or whatever it is for a convenience fee and all this other crap. So this is why movie tickets are astronomically more expensive than they should be in the first place, because we're paying basically Fandango to do jack shit, right? Like, they're not doing anything. And then if anything, This is supposed to have made the system easier when you go into a theater. I don't know about you guys, but to me, it makes it harder. It used to be I used to be able to slam my money down or give them my card and I'm in. Right nowadays, I gotta sift through my fucking phone, find this stupid little icon so the chick who can barely read anything can go doot 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 and give me a ticket, just like it used to be. So nothing is more convenient. If anything, it's more an inconvenience.
Huh.
And who cares at the end of the day if they really get to rate a movie over Fandango on Rotten Tomatoes or not? Most people are not going to pay attention to that. We're the only ones who are going to know this shit, and it's going to matter too. But I really think that the audience is smart enough at this point where they pay attention to people like us because they know that they are us, right? We are the audience, and they know if we come out and we say, yes, Deadpool and Wolverine's great, Alien Romulus, meh, The Crow, they trust us because we're telling them the truth. We're not getting anything in return for it. And all I think is, at the end of the day, I never trusted them to begin with. And I'm looking at this score for 65%. There's no way the audience scored The Crow at 65%.
Yeah,
no way.
I want to throw this. To Odin. Odin, what do you think of the changes that Rotten Tomatoes is proposing, and why do you think more people should be using Criticless.com?
Well, I mean, people like yourself should be using it a bit more, I would say. But I mean, it's great though. No, seriously, I'm always one to show for Criticless, and I'm not even sponsored by them. And the reason why is because, especially where it is now, where it's a very almost like a small tight-knit community, it almost feels in a lot of ways as being so much more trustworthy, right? I can go to a film like The Crow, I can go to a film like Alien Romulus, and I can get a general wisdom of the crowd's reaction, because it's not just a place where it's just hardcore critics, it's not just a place where you have a bunch of normie guys, and it's not just a place where you have, you know, people in our space where we tend to be a lot more sensitive to certain political ideologies and things being pushed. You get a good mixture of all different types, and that's what's so great about it, right? Because you'll have bad movies like The Crow come out, and you'll have a wide range of views and opinions on it, but you'll be able to see the trends. And that's what I like, is that you can really just see, okay, generally speaking, people are much more likely to put a heinous or bogus score for that movie, whereas for a film like Romulus, there's actually a lot more excellence to rads, but there's also those share of hardcore Aliens fans that are not a big fan of it either. And so I like that there's that dynamic, and also, at least at this point, it has not really been taken over by bot accounts, right? I go there and I see names that I recognize. I go there and I know, even if I don't know them personally, I know that they have been on the site for a long time. I've seen the kinds of reviews and the types of scores that they've been able to give, and so I'm able to better trust that for that very reason. Whereas if you go to Rotten Tomatoes, it's like you look at those scores and the names of the people, and it's just, people complain about anonymity on Twitter and other things. It's like, look at Rotten Tomatoes if you really want to have a great example of that. As far as like the changes that they're making, to me, it's not anything different than what they've already been doing, right? I mean, they've already changed the audience score, right? When they decided to go from having just the audience score to a verified versus an all audience score, right? And so now more changes. It's like, okay, now it's every time they do it, it's becoming that much more untrustworthy. Right. And to me, one of the biggest things that people still, I don't think spend as much time on is the overall critic score, because there are definitely people out there that do. And that's why I'll push back a little bit on what Tom said. I agree. They don't care what critics say, for sure. But Rotten Tomatoes, because it's become such a name, right? Because it built itself up over so many years, people did go to that, right? And they would say, well, Rotten Tomatoes says it's pretty good. Like, they wouldn't say, oh, this specific critic, right? But they would say, oh, the score. But it always drives me crazy about the freaking score on Rotten Tomatoes.
Because I don't think people understood what Rotten Tomatoes was, though. That's the thing, Odin. Yeah.
Exactly. Right, because they don't understand, right? They see 90% fresh rating, but then you dig into the weeds, and you're like, oh, the average score is actually closer to a 7 out of 10. It's like, okay, 90 and 70%, not the same thing. Because what people don't get is that you can give a film on Rotten Tomatoes a 5 out of 10, and you can still, as a reviewer on there, click fresh if you want to, or click rotten if you want to, because that's all that it is, right? You have the rotten scores, the fresh scores. Those are the critics choosing one or the other for the movie. It's a binary choice there. Whereas their actual review, their actual individual subjective score is their own thing, because some use them, some don't use them. And that's why I prefer, even though it's not perfect, I prefer a place like Metacritic as far as more mainstream than, but also now Criticless as well, because to me the scores make a lot more sense. It puts things in a much more even playing field, and you don't get this nonsense. But yeah, Rotten Tomatoes has been trash ever since they started to delete reviews. I remember I had a 24-hour stream going when I think it was Captain Marvel that was going on, where they were like deleting reviews for it, and I caught them in real time deleting reviews, changing the score, right? They've been playing Protect for these studios and for these movies for a long time now, and now with these new changes coming in, they can claim whatever high ground they want. All they end up actually doing is making them look that much less trustworthy, because a lot less people are using Rotten Tomatoes today than ever before.
Well, guys, we got a super chat from Old Man Rising for $5. Acolyte informed how morally bankrupt Disney really is. The creatives truly don't realize their heroes are the baddies. They have no moral compass. Yes, that's true. And Fluffy Panda, member for 16 months. I don't feel represented. Too many baldies. Yes. Everyone on the panel is balding in some way, shape, or form.
I ain't happy about it either, so I agree. One quick thing about the critic thing before we move on is, here's an easy suggestion. Go find some people who watch movies that you like, and if they like them too, and you see a few of those, stick with them. It's easy.
Well,
when
Joe,
you find
that's
somebody
what
who
I
shares
think
your
is
stuff,
going
who
on.
gives a shit what else they say or do? If they like the movies you like or whatever it is, music, anything, stick with them. And then doesn't matter what site they're on. Just follow those people. That's a better
But
way
here's
to do
the
it.
beauty of how that connects with Criticless. Because on Criticless, let's say those friends of yours are on that platform, you can put them in what's called friends with benefits. And then for a movie, you'll see the audience score, but then you'll see your friend's score. And so if it's people you trust, you'll actually see, oh, my friends really like this movie. The other audience doesn't seem to like it. Okay,
Right.
who am I going to go with here?
Yeah.
Well, and I think
guys-
we're already there, Joe, because that's what we are collectively kind of.
Guys.
here is that, yeah.
Do you know what everyone really seems to like?
Oh, boy.
Ice cream.
Chicken.
Turtles.
Chick-fil-A
Not everybody likes
is
chicken.
launching a streaming network, their own
Yes.
streaming network.
We need
And,
more streaming services.
Yeah, so basically, Chick-fil-A is deciding to get into the streaming game because KFC actually got into the console video
the video
game.
Bro,
So
I
not
know a
to be
YouTuber that
outdone.
has that. He has that
Yeah.
console where you can
Yeah,
heat your
no-
chicken while you play video games. It's awesome.
Yeah, it keeps your chicken warm while you play video games.
Yeah, it really works.
Yeah. But Chick-fil-A, not to be outdone by KFC, is like, you know what? We're going to get into the streaming world. And basically what they're doing is they're going to be creating their own streaming network that's focused on family-friendly content. They're going to be doing originals and scripted series, but they're also going to be doing a lot of non-scripted stuff. And before you ask about it, chat, it's not going to be called the Chick-fil-A network. They're going to have like a different name, but it's going to be funded by Chick-fil-A, and they're basically going to be the ones, approving the content that gets made there. But before
Not
we
gonna be
start
called
this,
Chick-Film-A? Boy, you missed out on that
There
one,
you go.
marketing team.
I know, right? I was talking to Joe about this before we started, and so he was very excited to talk about this. So I want to throw it to Joe first. What's your take on the Chick-Film-A streaming platform?
Well, the funniest part is I was reading the press release and I misread the service will consist of mostly unscripted fare as uninspired fare, which is what I'm guessing. Isn't Hallmark Channel the family-friendly channel? I mean, we've seen this before. I'm if they really think they can deliver something that's unique for people who want family content, great. I hope they do. I have no problem with that. Do I really believe that Chick-fil-A is in any position to do anything related to streaming? They can barely get their food to be tolerable. I tried it. It's way overhyped. It's just kind of crappy chicken. If you like it, that's great. I just didn't find anything special about it. So, yeah, this is trend chasing. This is a company that just wants to say, we've got one of these too. And I guess if there are Chick-fil-A super fans, maybe they'll show up because they're backing it. But this is a buyout play. This is somebody who's like, we can get bought by Disney or somebody else. Let's start a channel, make 3 unique films. Maybe one of them will hit and then somebody will acquire us. It's nothing more. This is a non-story almost.
Well, it's kind of interesting because I want to throw this to Odin. Odin, Chick-fil-A is a famously very heavily Christian company. They're closed on Sundays, for that reason. It's a religious thing. And I feel like this is their response to Disney, but they're not like making a big deal out of it. They're just kind of like quietly saying like, you know what, we need more family-friendly fare out there that doesn't have an agenda to it and pushes good values. So what's your take on Chick-fil-A basically entering the Hollywood entertainment field?
I mean, I'm kind of over the streamings. I mean, we have too many streaming services. There are so many that are still existing that really don't need to. And if it really was for that, that higher purpose, like trying to actually create better content, like they could much more easily just create a YouTube channel and have content be released there. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, like there would be no need to actually have to invest in the infrastructure that you need for a streaming service. Like when you imply streaming service, there are a lot of implications with that, especially not just the actual, cost of that streaming service, but then all of the other things that have to go into it. So, I mean, obviously there will be people that will get it. There will be people that will use it, whether they be Chick-fil-A super fans or whether they just be, Christian families that just want to support, Christian content. For all we know, like maybe they'll do it well, but based on history, based off of the trends, I don't think that it's going to be very good. I mean, even one of the higher end companies, independent companies out there that's trying to do same thing. No, actually, I was going to go like it's more in the political realm as far as the company is concerned, but Daily Wire having Bent Key, right? I like that they've done it, but I'll be honest, I have not seen or really wanted to watch anything on Bent Key, and I've not really been really pushed to show it even to my kids. Like again, not saying that the shows are bad. I'm just saying like I just don't have a desire for that, and that's one that I'd actually support more so than anything else that's already out. So for a thing like this, it's like I care even less for it.
Well, Brian, I wanted to ask you, if you were to pitch a show to Chick-fil-A, what show would you want them to produce?
Does it have to be religious?
No.
Okay. So if it can be anything, I want them to do some kind of 90s teen comedy. I want to go back to like the American Pie days and just go full ham teen comedy.
It's got to be family friendly though, Brian.
Oh, well then,
how about Porky's the series?
Yeah, Porky's the series.
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's do that.
All right.
You have Lassie. And,
you know what? No, meatballs. Let's do meatballs.
Yeah.
Tom Connors, do you think that this is going to be a successful endeavor? Yet another streaming service being launched?
I wholeheartedly believe in Cluck Flicks. That's what we're calling it, Cluck Flicks. Although I do like that name Joe came up with. We may have to steal that, son. As long as it's family friendly, we're all about this. What was the question again?
The story was clearly a plant to get this voice to be done.
I say absolutely positively, son.
All right. Well, Dutch Butters, as opposed to asking you about the Chick-fil-A story, I wanted to ask you about this other story, which is basically they're going to be rebooting Anaconda.
Oh, cool.
And on the Salty Nerd podcast, we just reviewed the original Anaconda.
I know.
And it's going to be coming out on Tuesday, our review of it. But Jack Black and Paul Rudd are basically circling the reboot here, which is going to be kind of like a horror / comedy / adventure story about a group of friends who basically go into the jungle to make a movie with their friends, like TikTok style movie, I guess.
Which one's playing Ice Cube and which one's playing J-Lo, though?
And then they're hunted by large snakes. And it's from the guy who wrote and directed the Nicolas Cage meta movie, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. So there is some talent behind this thing, but do you think that this is going to be any good?
Oh, it's either going to be terrible or one of the greatest things ever made. There's not going to be any middle ground there. All I know is I put that picture back up. That shirt that Jack Black has on, I want one. I want to play video games.
Oh my, that shirt is
that is something else, man. That is
a loud shirt.
It looks like you can eat it and it would be sour.
That shirt took LSD, guys. I mean, come on. I mean,
I want one of those so bad now. It's Anaconda, man. It's kind of weird. We decided about a month ago we were going to watch Anaconda for the podcast to review it for August Bites, and all of a sudden I start seeing Anaconda shit everywhere. It's like, so I'm just gonna say the Anaconda resurgence that we're getting, they can thank the Salty Nerd podcast for, and I want some money out of the deal. this thing, I mean, I have no fan attachment to this thing, so it's one of those movies that's probably rife for a remake. I'm not going to get offended that Hollywood wants to remake a giant snake eating people movie. You know, maybe they can launch some careers of some new up and comers. You know, who's the new Ice Cube and Owen Wilson and J-Lo out there that needs a movie like this to jumpstart their careers? You know, who's going to play the John Voight role? I mean, come on, that's the most amazing thing that's ever been put on film. Was John Voight's role in that movie. He was fantastic, amazing. So. Yeah, man, I might even go to the theater and watch an Anaconda remake with Jack Black. And,
I mean, the CGI can't be any worse than the original.
Yeah, I mean, probably going to be fantastic. You know that scene where is it Luke or Owen Wilson? I always get him messed up.
It's Owen.
Owen, where he's like in the snake's stomach and it's swimming in the water, and he's all sticking out through the skin. It was incredible. It's just really good stuff. But yeah, man, Anaconda. I'm down.
My Anaconda don't.
Jack Black probably needs to go take a break for 6 months or so, get out of the public eye for a little while, because he's kind of in trouble.
And maybe died a little bit, just a little bit.
He needs to go self-cancel for a little bit and have a comeback with
and a slight calorie deficit. All I'm saying, he's starting to look really robust.
Cut. You know,
he's always been bigger, but now he's looking robust. If you know what I mean.
So yeah.
Well, let me ask Joe, do you think Columbia Pictures should be approaching Len Kabaczynski to direct this reboot?
I think they should be approaching Len Kabaczynski for any number of things. So certainly I would love to see him. I mean, what I would love is if the snake on his arm came alive and became the anaconda. There's your perfect CG kind of usage of the thing. So yes, I support Len making anything. So I agree. Although I do agree with you. I never remember the full title of the other Nicolas Cage movie. I like that movie quite a bit. So this has better chances in my eyes.
The unbearable weight of massive talent.
That's it. I always forget the last two words. Unbearable weight of something. I have the unbearable weight of something too. But that movie was actually a lot of fun. So I think Dutch has got it right. It's either going to be awful and may still be watchable awful, or it's going to be really, really good. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near the middle. So it's such a weird left field movie to be rebooting anyway that I kind of love the idea that this, of all the things you pick, is Anaconda. Okay, let's see what you do with it. I'm in for it. Sure, why not?
Yeah, and I'd be interested to see what Lynn could do with an actual budget for a change. Be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Real quick, guys, we got a super chat for $5 from Fluffy Panda. Just what we need, another streaming channel. But that's why I love Flixor, F Movies, and Watch Wrestling free streaming. Hashtag the more you know. That's right.
Anaconda, the first movie, was one of the few films I wanted to walk out of in theaters.
Yeah, I remember seeing it in the theater, and it was pure crap.
So wretched at that time. I mean, even then we were like, these effects are supposed to be amazing. And this was like 5 years after Jurassic Park.
Yeah, and it was like two years before The Matrix.
Yeah, and the effects were so bad. And it's like...
pretty bad.
The story itself was like, whatever, throwaway B movie. I have no problem with that. I have zero interest in anything right now with Jack Black. And I don't understand this incessant need to have comedians and mix them into horror projects lately. And I guess it has to be because of Danny McBride and David Gordon Green making Halloween, right? Because other than that movie working, I guess, on a financial level, none of these other, let's drag in a comedian into a horror franchise have worked. Like, I don't get this new trend. I don't know if Odin or anybody else has noticed this, but it's been this trend lately. And it's like, they're not making horror films any better. Is it because Jordan Peele became a big thing or something with his horror films? Is that it? I don't get it.
You know, my wife and I watched Slumber Party Massacre the other day, and I think that there is a criminal trend of lack of bare breasts in horror movies nowadays.
Here.
100%. You totally agree.
Yeah, I agree. But
there was a lot of newer movies that could be getting an extra half a star on their ratings if they just put a few boobs in the shows. You know?
Oh yeah.
There's movies that used to be sold completely on that. It didn't matter what the rest of the movie was. 100%. You just knew you were going to see boobs at some point in the movie.
Dude, there was TV shows I only started watching for that one reason. I ended up liking the show after the fact. Like, it wasn't because the first few episodes were good. No. That wasn't the case
Listen,
at all.
Spartacus is not that great of a show.
No,
You
it's
think
not.
I watched
Yeah.
But
Sorority
it's
Massacre
the best
2?
thing ever put on TV. It's
Yeah,
You think
it's
I watched
outstanding.
Sorority House Massacre 2 for the fucking story? No.
Well, that's one thing I'll say about Lynn Kabazinski is he knows how to put boobs in his movies. But guys,
No,
we had a lot.
yeah,
We had a
Paul
lot to
Rudd's
talk
okay,
about
but
today.
yeah.
We had a lot to talk about today, and we talked about it. I want to thank my fantastic panel of nerds for sitting here for another 2 hours on a Saturday when they could have been doing so much more productive things and talking about stuff nobody actually cares about. So, Odin, any final thoughts, and where can people find more of you?
Yeah, you can find me over on OMB Reviews on YouTube, Odyssey, Rumble, Twitter, etc. And you can find more of me on my Monday night show, 7:45 p.m. Eastern Time, where I talk about box office, movies, etc. Be on the lookout tomorrow for a box office breakdown looking into the catastrophe that is the rebooted Crow. It's not making anything, looking at single digits opening weekend for the domestic. And yeah, it's going to be another big weekend for Deadpool Wolverine and a decent hold for Alien Romulus.
All right, Tom Connors Jr., any final thoughts, and where can people find more of you?
Don't go see The Crow. It's horrible. Very bad. Very, very bad. You can find me at Midnight's Edge After Dark, Need Radio. I pop up somewhere here, there, everywhere. I should be on Flashcast later. And I just want to say to Joe, he's the best around, and nothing's going to ever bring him down.
There you go. Speaking of Joe,
Right.
Joe, any final thoughts, and where can people find more of you? And before you answer that, just want to let everyone watching know that link to Ozone Nightmare YouTube channel is in the description and pinned in the chat. So go show Joe some love by subscribing over there, because YouTube does not like him for some reason.
That's okay. I don't like YouTube either, so it's a mutual relationship. I'm fine with it. It's okay. Yeah, ozonenightmare.com is basically the one address. You go there and everything's there. As far as people who were into movies, we did on the YouTube channel just do a 5-hour retrospective on RoboCop 2 and Predator 2, which unfortunately there's no clips in because YouTube is a monster, but you know, it's still a good conversation. We still talk about two great and underrated sequels. So that's the kind of stuff you'll get there. And everything else you'll find at that address. My artwork is there. My podcast is there, and my incessant babbling is apparently all over the place. But thank you for tolerating it for another couple hours.
Well, you're always welcome to come back on the show whenever you want, Joe. Joe was actually in our studio where we watched The Hunted with Lynn
Great
Kabazinski.
movie. If you haven't seen it, you must watch The Hunted. It's fantastic. It's great.
Surprisingly good Christopher Lambert movie, I will admit. I did not go into it with high hopes, but Lynn convinced me. So if you guys want to check that review out on our channel, it is definitely available. Brian from the Popcast, any final thoughts, and where can people find more of you?
No final thoughts. Glad to be here as usual. I still have a bunch of editing to do, but we have our big Star Trek Voyager doc launching tomorrow morning on our main channel. It's 2.5 hours long, and I'm still about 15 hours away of work, so it's gonna be fun.
Nothing like burning the candle at both ends, eh?
Yeah, all the ends are burning at the same time, but it's gonna be great when it's done. So,
oh, there we go, the Blu-ray edition of The
check it
Hunted.
out tomorrow.
Yes, be sure to check it out. We'll try to blast out a link to it when it is published, so people know where to find it. Dutch Butters, congratulations on your latest gaming channel video. It seems to be doing really well. What do you got going on over at the gaming channel?
So yeah, man, we're dropping 2 podcasts a week over there for our Salt Divers show, and we're actually getting ready to turn one of the Friday show. We're getting ready to convert it into a different show altogether called Weekend Respawn. It's going to be a brand new video gamers dedicated show for people like me and Alex and all you guys on the panel right here who have jobs and like to play video games on your free time, mostly on your weekends. So that's what it's going to be dedicated to that, and and hanging out, playing games with your kids and that kind of stuff. It's something that Alex wants to kind of focus on because he likes to play games with his 3 boys, and they have a lot of fun. So we're going to pivot one show a week over to a little more general thing like that. It's going to be super cool. And then we're also doing our Helldivers show on Tuesday. The channel is blowing up over there. We're getting way more views than we deserve on our shows, and we're also doing 3 to 4 live streams a week, just video game streams. It continues to be Helldivers, but that's going to be pivoting to different games like a Space Marine 2 here very soon, as soon as it comes out, and we're just having a ton of fun over there. We're having a good time. So
Well,
check it out
guys,
and give us a follow.
Speaking of fun, real quick before we get out of here, what should we mean tweet to celebrate hitting our super chat goal? Any ideas?
Ooh, yeah.
Is James Mangold still blocking?
Something really racist. It's not my account, so let's go crazy. Yeah.
So,
All right. Why don't we all mean tweet about the Chick-Fil-A streaming service? We'll do
that, or
something
you know
about
what
that.
you should say is put boobies in horror movies again, something
No,
along
no.
those lines.
I got it. Let's mean tweet about the Crow. We'll mean tweet about the Crow remake.
Not enough boobs.
Not enough boobs in the Crow remake.
Yes.
Okay.
Hashtag
that what you want me to
more boobs,
tweet?
hashtag less mascara for the new Crow movie.
Okay.
Hashtag less mascara. I like that. All right, guys. Want to give a big shout out to everyone who donated during the stream. William Forbes, Jillian N, Old Man Rising, Mexican Iron Man, You Fukdat, and Fluffy Panda. Thank you so much for your super chats, and to everyone who gifted memberships. Really appreciate that, you guys. You make this live stream possible, and be sure to tune in next Saturday, where I believe we have, don't quote me on this, but I believe we have Dub from the Dub Pro Show coming on as our special guest. So it's always a good time when Dub shows up. But until then, guys, be sure to tune in next Saturday, same salty time, same salty channel, and stay salty, everyone.